Document dump has U.S. intelligence officials hunting for the leaker. Documents detailing U.S. efforts to turn smartphones, smart TVs, and computers into spy tools. This is Special Report. Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Bret Baier. It is being called another catastrophic breach for the U.S. intelligence community at the hands of WikiLeaks tonight. Thousands of documents and files on how the CIA uses cyberspace to spy on the bad guys and maybe even some of the good guys, too, using the Internet of Things and devices in homes around the world. It has the intelligence community on a hunt for the leaker of sensitive tradecraft and detailed computer code. Correspondent Benjamin Hall in London tonight with a story that continues to develop at this hour.
The CIA can hack our televisions. This just one of the many revelations breaking from a new WikiLeaks dump of thousands of apparent CIA secrets. Fugitive Julian Assange and his secret spilling organization has posted over 8,000 documents online, which they claim show how government spies can penetrate, infest, and control phones, computers, even self-driving cars. Experts say exposing tradecraft like this is a major blow.
When you lose this capability, which you will when your adversaries discover what you're doing, it's a real compromise and it's really damaging.
The CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence is based in Langley. WikiLeaks say the documents were obtained from a, quote, isolated high-security network at the facility. The trove, bearing names such as Assassin and Medusa, had been circulated among former U.S. government hackers and contractors, one of whom, quote, recently gave the archive to WikiLeaks. Among the disclosures that some CIA hacking methods could be made to appear as if the hacks were perpetrated by other countries, including, as named in the documents, Russia. Apple was also supposedly targeted, amid claims the CIA has an entire division devoted to hacking Apple products, as well as the ability to bypass encrypted messages. A reminder that it took the government months to finally get into the San Bernardino shooter's iPhone. If this intel is legit, and analysts believe it is, it would be another hit to the U.S. intelligence community, courtesy of WikiLeaks. And a source that has worked in this very cyber unit tells Fox News that the agency is now desperately searching for that man or person who gave the secrets away because they are so very sensitive. Bret?
More on this with the panel. Benjamin Hall in London. Benjamin, thank you. President Trump is being challenged tonight on another Twitter announcement that brought almost instant derision or questions. The president is criticizing the man he replaced for supposedly releasing dozens of terror suspects from Guantanamo Bay who have returned to the battlefield. For many, the numbers didn't add up. The White House had to clarify today. The same is true for the GOP effort at repealing and replacing Obamacare. A lot of questions about that as well. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts joins us now with another filled day from the White House, North Lawn. Good evening, John.
It's always a full day here, Brett. Good evening to you. The White House today portrayed the new health care bill as phase one in a comprehensive process, trying to keep the messaging here today as positive as possible. Standing beneath the portrait of the woman he vanquished in the election, President Trump welcomed the first tour group since his inauguration to the White House.
Work hard, everybody. Work hard.
The president is anxious to get back on track after the latest blow-up in the Russia controversy and his accusations of wiretapping that left even the president's staff scratching their heads as to what he was talking about. The move to repeal and replace Obamacare is President Trump's first big legislative initiative. This afternoon, he met with the congressional team that will whip the Republican votes to get it through the House.
I'm proud to support the replacement plan released by the House of Representatives and encouraged by members of both parties. I think really that we're going to have something that's going to be much more understood and much more popular than people can even imagine.
But the White House is scrambling to quell fierce opposition from conservative Republicans who say it's still Obamacare, just in a different form. The president's HHS secretary left to defend the tax credit that replaces the Obamacare subsidy for low-income earners.
The central part of it, which is tax credits, which they see as yet another entitlement, very similar to the entitlement of Obamacare, they're different in form. How do you convince them, since it's going to take tax credits to make this work, that they need to swallow this and move forward with the bill? I mean, you're getting an awful lot of opposition.
And we, conservatives and others, have said for a long, long time that we believe it's important to equalize the tax treatment for those purchasing coverage, gaining coverage through their employer, and those not. And the tax credit is the opportunity to be able to equalize that tax treatment.
The president himself handled the messaging after it was pointed out two of his big campaign promises, selling insurance across state lines and negotiating lower drug prices, weren't in this bill. The president tweeting, "Don't worry, getting rid of state lines, which will promote competition, will be in phase 2 and 3 of healthcare rollout. And I am working on a new system where there will be competition in the drug industry. Pricing for the American people will come way down." But the president fumbled an attack against his predecessor today when he took aim at the Obama administration's release of prisoners from Guantanamo Bay. The president tweeting, 122 vicious prisoners released by the Obama administration from Gitmo have returned to the battlefield. Just another terrible decision. The problem, the Pentagon says of the 121 prisoners confirmed to have returned to the battlefield, only 8 were released by the Obama administration. The rest were released by President Bush.
Obviously, the president meant in totality the number that had been released on the battlefield, that have been released from Gitmo since individuals have been released.
And just as the furor over Russia was beginning to die down, the president stirred the pot again today, tweeting, "For 8 years, Russia ran over President Obama, got stronger and stronger, picked off Crimea, and added missiles. Weak." The White House offered no new evidence today to back up the president's assertion on Saturday that President Obama had ordered wiretapping of Trump Tower. The staff just kept saying this is now in the hands of the Congressional Intelligence Committees, where, frankly, Brett, they hope it will quietly go away. We'll see. John Roberts live on the North Lawn. John, thank you. There's much more debate than usual tonight over the confirmation of the man who would be second in command at the Justice Department. That's because he could be the decision maker on any investigation into President Trump, his campaign, and alleged ties to Russia. Here's Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge.
The federal probe into Russian meddling of the November elections dominated the confirmation hearing for Deputy Attorney General.
Is there any basis on which you would not be able to handle such these investigations?
I'm not aware of any requirement for me to recuse at this time.
Leaving the door open for a special prosecutor was not enough for Democrats after the resignation of National Security Advisor Mike Flynn and the recusal of Attorney General Sessions over their Russian contacts.
We are in an extraordinary time, careening toward a constitutional crisis.
I cannot remember anything in my years here that's troubled me more.
We need steel spines, not weak knees, when it comes to political independence in the Department of Justice.
If it's America against Russia or America against any other country, I think everyone in this room knows which side I'm on.
Rod Rosenstein is politically neutral, with 27 years in the Justice Department, working in the broader Whitewater probe before being appointed a U.S. attorney by President George W. Bush and being retained in the post by President Obama. But Republicans said that resume was still not enough for Democrats.
But then my colleagues here ask you whether you'll abdicate those responsibilities without even knowing the evidence and appoint a special counsel.
And Republicans called out Democrats who did not press former Attorney General Loretta Lynch to recuse herself after meeting with Bill Clinton during the FBI's probe of Hillary Clinton's email server.
This kind of double standard makes it at least look like partisan politics.
Both parties questioned Rosenstein on President Trump's weekend claims that President Obama wiretapped Trump Tower.
If the president is exercising his First Amendment rights, that's not my issue.
No president can just unilaterally say, go wiretap that American citizen.
And I agree with you that that would not happen.
Do you pledge to continue to pursue any ongoing investigation by the Justice Department into Russian interference in the 2016 election?
Absolutely, I would support it.
I want you to look me in the eye
and tell me that you'll do it right.
But the January testimony from Attorney General Sessions, where he did not disclose 2 prior meetings with the Russian ambassador, hung like a dark cloud over the hearing.
For him to put this in his letter as a response is insulting. And he should come back and explain himself.
I consider what Senator Franken asked Sessions at that late moment, that story just come out, as a gotcha question.
And Senator Grassley emphasized as the hearing concluded that there is still no evidence of collusion between Trump campaign associates and Russian intelligence. If no charges are brought, there was a bipartisan call for the findings to be made public. Brett.
Captain, thank you. The Obamacare repeal and replace legislation is getting serious pushback from both ends of the political spectrum tonight. It's called the American Health Care Act. Conservatives say it does not go far enough. Democrats say it goes too far. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel is live tonight on Capitol Hill with reaction on all sides. Good evening, Mike.
Brett, good evening. 24 hours after unveiling their plan to repeal and replace Obamacare, top Trump administration officials and leaders here on Capitol Hill are now selling it. Late today, House Speaker Paul Ryan said he guarantees it will have the votes to pass.
Doing big things is never easy, but we have made a promise, and we're going to keep that promise.
With their first major legislative priority under attack from some on the right and left, Vice President Mike Pence came to the defense of the GOP health care plan.
This is the bill, and the President supports the American Health Care Act and looks forward to working very directly with leadership of the House and Senate to move this bill.
A letter from HHS Secretary Tom Price to lawmakers explained this is a first step since selling insurance across state lines and negotiating drug costs could not be included in this kind of reconciliation measure. Earlier, Ways and Means Chairman Kevin Brady pushed GOP colleagues to get on board.
As Republicans, we have a choice. We can act now, or we can keep fiddling around and squander this opportunity to repeal Obamacare.
Outside conservative groups Heritage Action and Club for Growth blasted the proposal, and late today members of the House Freedom Caucus and Kentucky Senator Rand Paul called for voting on a straight Obamacare repeal since they're opposed to this package.
We are divided. We have to admit we are divided on replacement. We are united on repeal, but we are divided on replacement.
There's a leadership plan that was brought forward, which I believe, when you look through it, is Obamacare in a different form.
Earlier, Energy and Commerce Chairman Greg Walden tried to defend it.
These are big measures moving forward. We've certainly met the test of the President and Secretary Price, who believe this is repeal and reform.
House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi is demanding to know the price tag from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, writing to Speaker Paul Ryan today, quote, "The American people and members have a right to know the full impact of this legislation before any vote in committee or by the whole House." And the Senate's top Democrats sounded eager to tie this proposal to the new president.
Trump Care will make health insurance in America measurably worse in just about every way and leave more Americans uninsured.
This is setting up as a showdown where White House and top congressional leaders dare rank-and-file conservatives to oppose the bill, making the case that would violate their campaign pledges and end up saving Obamacare. Brett?
Mike Emanuel live on the Hill. Mike, thank you. A new Congressional Budget Office study says the Trump administration and its GOP allies in Congress will not have to act until sometime this fall to increase the government's borrowing limit. Current law permits the administration to freely borrow through March 15th. The Treasury Department is permitted to use a variety of bookkeeping maneuvers, what the CBO calls extraordinary measures, to continue to finance government operations after that. Stocks were down again today. The Dow lost 30. The S&P 500 dropped 7. The Nasdaq fell 15. President Trump met with the nation's top labor union official today at the White House. It is the latest move in a political relationship that has been hot and cold. Tonight, Chief Washington Correspondent James Rosen shows us why. Good evening, James.
Brett, good evening. We were all set for cameras to be allowed into the Oval Office to record a portion of the Trump-Trumka summit. Late today, without explanation, the White House said the meeting was still on, but news coverage was blacked out. Perhaps a reflection that these two titans of their respective fields felt they could accomplish more in private.
I'm sorry that we did not win this election.
It was hardly a surprise that on her way to losing the presidency, Hillary Clinton won the union labor vote, but Clinton's 51% to Donald Trump's 42% marked a 5-point drop-off from the share commanded by President Obama in 2012.
We're going to fight for you like I promised I would in the campaign.
Sensing an opening, President Trump has courted labor, as when he invited miners to the White House last month to watch him sign a law rolling back an Obama-era regulation on the coal industry.
Everything that you're doing for our industry is very much needed.
The head of the AFL-CIO said that for his rank and file, the first billionaire businessman to become chief executive has thus far presented a mixed bag.
What he did on TPP was good. The thing he's trying to do with infrastructure is good. There's a lot of those things. And then on the other side, you know, he put some people in that were pretty anti-union.
The head of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, which boasts 1.4 million members, broke with the Obama administration on the Keystone Pipeline and pointedly declined to endorse Hillary Clinton during the Democratic primaries. Now the group is keeping an open mind about Donald Trump.
We want the American worker to be successful, and if that includes working with the president, we certainly will do that. He is the president, and we intend to work with him where we can.
I, Richard Nixon, do solemnly swear.
The only time a Republican nominee has won the labor vote was President Nixon's landslide re-election in 1972. Ronald Reagan in 1980 came close, falling 3 points shy. Brad Blakeman, a former aide to President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor, is working privately to strengthen the ties between big labor and the Republican Party.
They're giving this president the benefit of the doubt to wait and see what his infrastructure program is going to look like, what trade is going to look like, what relations between Mexico are going to look like, especially Mexican trucking, for instance, coming into our country.
Last year, according to federal statistics, the number of wage and salary workers belonging to unions declined to about 14.5 million. The peak of American union membership was the mid-1950s, Brett, when more than 1/3 of all wage and salary workers belonged to one.
A shifting coalition.
Perhaps.
James, thanks. The U.S. is moving state-of-the-art missile defense equipment to South Korea in response to more missile testing from North Korea. That is causing major blowback from China. Correspondent Rich Edson explains from the State Department tonight.
The Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, an American system designed to intercept and destroy incoming missiles. After another series of North Korean missile launches into the Sea of Japan, the United States has deployed this system to South Korea and is reassuring an alarmed Chinese government these missiles are only defensive.
I think we've been very clear that THAAD, which is what they're referring to, is clearly a defensive system. The reason we're pursuing this implementation or deployment of THAAD with South Korea is because of North Korea's continued, for lack of a better term, bad behavior.
Despite the U.S. reassurances, China strongly opposes the deployment and is already retaliating economically, closing nearly 24 stores in China owned by a South Korean conglomerate. That company agreed to allow the South Korean government to deploy the missile defense system on land it owns. The Chinese government also threatens the U.S. is beginning a regional arms race.
We will surely take necessary measures to safeguard our own security interest. The United States and the ROK will bear all the consequence arising therefrom.
The U.S. has long considered, and China long opposed, deploying this system to South Korea. The U.S. announced it was doing so one day after North Korea launched 4 missiles into the South China Sea. Despite international condemnation and sanctions, North Korea continues developing its ballistic missile and nuclear programs. Since 2006, it has successfully achieved 5 nuclear explosions and routinely fires ballistic missiles. Next week, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson will travel to Japan, South Korea, and China. The State Department says he will discuss moving beyond sanctions to deter North Korean behavior.
And it's getting to the point where we do need to look at other alternatives, and that's part of what this trip is about.
The Trump administration has repeatedly requested China deter its ally, North Korea, from continuing its nuclear and missile programs. It wants China to fully implement sanctions against North Korea.
In claiming an unprecedented penalty, the United States has announced a settlement with ZTE. It's a Chinese technology company. It'll cost ZTE more than $1 billion. The offense, selling banned technology to Iran and violating U.S. sanctions. Brett.
Rich Edson, live at the State Department. Rich, thanks. Up next, why it's possible you may not see many women at your job tomorrow. We'll explain. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 10 in Phoenix, as a judge awards an Army veteran $2.5 million in a malpractice suit against the Phoenix VA hospital. Stephen Cooper has terminal prostate cancer. He contends his medical practitioner failed to follow up on an abnormal prostate exam. Cooper is said to have less than 5 years to live. Fox 40 in Jackson, Mississippi, as a train collides with a charter bus in Biloxi. Officials say at least 4 people are dead and 35 hurt. Witnesses said the bus appeared to be stuck on the tracks and the eastbound train hit the bus broadside. And this is a live look at Denver from our affiliate, Fox 31. One of the big stories there tonight, a grass fire burning in northeastern Colorado has destroyed 4 homes and damaged multiple other homes and outbuildings.